My name is John Lawson. I'm Executive Director of the AWARN Alliance. AWARN is the Advanced Warning and Response Network. We are using ATSC 3.0 to drastically improve the alerting system in the U.S. that we have today. We have a very fragmented system. It's very uneven in terms of service and coverage. Some local jurisdictions do it really well, others are under-equipped. We have situations like Paradise, California, where no warning was sent. We have other situations where people are adequately warned and lives are saved. We have a state agency sending a false nuclear ballistic missile alert in Hawaii, and we have stations that are organizations that get out alerts in a very timely way. But the common denominator is that the system is fragmented, and the tools that the alert authorities have are pretty limited. Everyone's familiar with the 90-character text message, like the Amber Alert. Very effective. We strongly support it. I was on the FCC advisory committee that developed the recommended rules for that implementation. We've got the legacy emergency alert system that goes back to the Cold War. It's not used very often for one reason: there's no geo-targeting. You can't put a message in and reach a targeted area. It reaches the entire contour of the TV signal. So I've been working on alerting one way or the other with digital television since the right after 9/11. This is the first time we've really had the tools with ATSC 3.0 Next Gen to make a big difference. And we've got a short story of what we're doing here at the show on the key aspect there.
Television broadcasters are leading the way with a new system that will merge the capabilities of over-the-air broadcasting.
Just a little bit about me.
2 decades ago, the
2018 was sort of the year of FEMA for me. I was on the federal, on the FEMA's advisory subcommittee that recommended new rules for the integrated public alert and warning system, or new policies, and somehow they let me into the FEMA Emergency Management Executive Academy as one of the few non-emergency managers, and that was a great learning experience. So I occasionally write on issues like alerting and the Hawaii situation, and we celebrated the 1-year anniversary of ATSC's approval by the Commission last November, and I was one of the 4 signatories to that joint petition to the Commission, and we were very gratified that advanced alerting by all 4 commissioners was given as one of the great benefits of ATSC 3.0. Even the 2 Democrats who didn't vote for approval, they saw the potential here, and I'm very glad to be part of an industry, and I see Mark Richer here, president of ATSC, that baked in advanced alerting into that standard from the very beginning. So we're all familiar with the 90-character text message. This was the first test of the presidential alert. The only broadcast obligation for alerting is to send the presidential alert, which was created during the Cold War. Thank God it was never sent. But for the first time, it was tested on cell phones last October. It was controversial because a lot of people thought it was a way to force people to receive and read a tweet from the president. But in fact, it was a test emergency alert. If you ever get one of these from the presidential authority, it's going to be a really, really bad day, unless it's a test. These are our current members. We have commercial broadcast groups and public stations that reach 90% of U.S. households. We have national organizations, including NAB and CTA, and technology providers in the U.S., South Korea, and Japan, including LG Electronics has been with us a long time. I have to point out who's not on this list. We still don't have any of the broadcast networks, and some station groups really should be part of this, but we're hoping to recruit them because it's a tremendous benefit for the industry to be leaders in 3.0 Senator Smith called for 3.0 tuner chips in smartphones in his opening remarks, and we think that giving people the ability to get a multimedia targeted alert on their mobile phones to receive the kind of information I'm going to show you is going to be a great driver of adoption and a supporter of our public policy positions. This is our advisory committee. We're very fortunate to have these organizations providing input for us. I want to call out the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, in particular, NCMEC. They're not in our current use case, but they gave us content for our first prototype, and it was I'll show you in a moment. But it's they've all been very helpful for us. So the FEMA's National Advisory Council passed along some recommendations to Congress that were required by Congress. I was on the subcommittee that helped develop those, and it really recommends some major changes to the way we do alerting. The federal government will never have a central role in alerting in the United States, and there are many reasons, many benefits to not having a centralized system, but we need some standards. We need training. We need a different way of doing alerting than what we're doing now. I'd also like to point out that because of climate change and because of these extreme weather events, the need for resilience for communities, families, individuals, communities, nations is growing more and more apparent. We've been asked at 2 meetings of the World Bank, which has committed $50 billion to climate change and mitigation, including improving disaster warning. And it's pretty exciting to see what's going on around the world, and the fact that they are interested in the technology that that we're leveraging to do advanced alerting. So one other point I'd like to make at this show in particular is that there are some very large segments of the media and communications industries that aren't doing any alerting, but that is probably going to change. There's legislation in Congress that passed the Senate unanimously. I think it'll pass both houses this year, that will require the FCC for the first time to recommend to Congress how the streaming companies would do localized alerting. And this, to me, creates an opportunity for broadcasters using ATSC 3.0 with home gateways connected by Wi-Fi with other devices like your handhelds to provide an elegant solution for the streaming companies so that we can overlay a localized alert instead of trying to do it through the internet. So resilience, I think it's important to see a framework that we use, that I use for resilience, and you can see that it used to be resilience. It was called readiness, and it was about having 14 days of water, and it was about having an escape plan and fresh batteries. That doesn't work. FEMA commissioned a survey. 17% of Americans said that they did that. They were ready for a disaster. But that's not really the key to survival anyway. It's these factors: technological integration, with social integration. Social integration, do you know that the senior citizen who's living alone at the end of the street needs a boat to come get her, or is there some place to evacuate to? And technological integration, to me, goes hand in hand with that, and I credit Dr. Jessica Jensen for this model. Behavior research, this is why ATSC 3.0, one of the reasons it's so important. Behavioral research tells us how many people, well, I've given you the answer. I was going to ask for a show of hands. It's very common to believe that the normal response of human beings to emergencies is panic. I thought that until I started researching it, but there's a very large body of research that indicates that panic is pretty rare. People usually do not panic in an emergency, even if it's an airline crash or a fire, or even a shooting. And typically, they're on better behavior in those situations in terms of treating fellow humans than they are in their normal lives. But what is very common is panic, is freezing. People delay. The social scientists call it milling. Milling means that you delay action to get either confirmation or more information. Classic example, smoke alarm goes off in your building. Do you get up and run out? Or do you look around to see who else is anyone else getting up to run out? Do you smell smoke? A more tragic example is in the Joplin, Missouri tornado disaster in 2012. Over 200 people were killed that day. They found bodies in the rubble, clutching their mobile phones, trying to get information from their local weather station, their local TV station, about where the tornado was, and all they had were sirens, and that milling, that delay, killed them. If they had been able to get the track of the hurricane and time to impact and that kind of data at their fingertips, so more people undoubtedly would have survived. So the other advantage of our approach, and it's common to broadcasting in general, and this includes radio, is it's survivable. It's survivable infrastructure. Wireless is vulnerable not only to congestion, but these cell towers literally burn up. They lose power. It's not just, and 5G might make it worse, because today in a disaster zone, you can roll in cellular on light trucks, cellular on wheels, colts and cows, and restore service. In a 5G world, it'll be much, much more distributed with hundreds or thousands of cell sites, and it might take a lot longer to restore that service. It's not just fires. This is FCC data from the day that Irma hit southwestern Florida. You can see from the red and orange shading in the south of Florida that some of those counties had 80-90% cellular loss, but every TV station in the state stayed on the air that day except for one. So we are using 3.0 to create a new way to do alerting in the US. Our goals are really the what of advanced alerting. We have great technical partners in our booth over in Features Park. NAB Pilot provided funding and direction for Trevini to do an open source project to integrate alerting information from various sources, including the federal IPAWS system, and use an app approach to make sure that that information is presented on screens with a very common look and feel. The social science tells us that people need to recognize an alert. It needs to look the same no matter which TV set it's running on, which state you're in, what station you're watching. And to get that common look and feel, we need to use HTML5, and that's our technical partners are doing that, but we specified the UX, what they have to do. Just as a little reminder, I presented this to an FCC commissioner, and he said he needed a trigger warning before he saw this. This is literally a slide from a screen grab from a EAS warning for an Amber Alert in New Jersey on cable, and it tells you the kind of information that we're getting, and again, it's no geographic targeting. And this is the current wireless emergency alert system. Has everyone received one of these at some time in their lives? Everyone? No? Has anyone not? My first one was 2 a.m. My iPhone went off and made a sound I had never heard before, and it was for a missing child in a vehicle somewhere on I-95. It was like, I'm going to get out of bed and drive to I-95 and start looking for the kid. This is over alerting. It's a problem. The Amber people are aware of it. It needs to be geographically targeted, but the problem is when people get alerts like this, it's not enough information. And on my iPhone, if I actually touch that dialogue, it takes me to the settings so I can turn it off. So you as an American citizen have a right to opt out of any alerts except the one from the President of the United States. And over alerting the emergency managers have told us again and again, over-alerting is the biggest problem in emergency alerting, and their biggest need is for geographic targeting. And we're going to do that for them. So this was our first UX. This was done by LG and Zenith, and I think this is 2016. And this was an Amber Alert. And you can see that we just made up the UX. We just made it up kind of on the fly, but you can see this screen here. This is the literal Amber Alert information that is distributed, and it's a lot of words, it's a lot of text. It's not TV friendly, but we wanted to take the real thing. This was a made-up use case. These photos, these images are not real people, by the way. NICMEC has a forensics unit that does facial reconstructions, so they gave us these composites. But going back to that 90-character text message, there's nothing about the kid. There's no description, let alone an image. And this is the kind of information we can easily provide. Even from the beginning, we put the viewer in control. We did not give them a dismiss button, which you'll see was an evolution, but they were in charge. This is the composite image of the abductor. We can give people that. We understand from our NICMEC colleagues that the first hour after an abduction is golden if there is going to be harm to the child. So that first hour is the window for recovery, and if you could actually put out this kind of content to people, they could actually see the car and the license plate, then they believe, as do we, that we will increase recovery. So as I was saying earlier, we introduced HTML5 in 2017. This is our second prototype. You'll notice some differences in the UX. The banner now appears at the bottom. It doesn't cover the whole screen. The user is in control of selecting more information. We thought that if we put icons of the people involved, that people would be more interested and click on it. We got a lot of good response to these. Again, you're using your remote control. All of this UX development work was done for a 16:9 television screen. We know that mobile will follow, but we're looking at television right now. And this is all done with a remote. And you're going to see this classic L bar is very interesting. Our Japanese colleagues are in the booth with us. We saw their UX that they developed totally differently from us, and we saw one from Guyana in India. And we all came up with the same L bar design. This information is coming from the alerting authority, except for the picture-in-picture, which belongs to the TV station, and they can continue running their programming. They can put in a clip that they would use for the web, or they can have specialized live coverage if they want it. This is just a heads-up display from that prototype. Again, if you could give people that kind of information about the car, where it is or where it was last seen, direction it was headed, it's probably going to really improve recovery results and time. So we decided that we were going to develop a UX with a little bit more intention and care. We started with Dewey Reed, who's a famous creative executive for CNN and did their breaking news graphics for multiple platforms. And we worked with OpenZNet, and we convened through local emergency managers we knew these focus groups in these 3 cities last fall. And together, these people do alerting for 40 million people. We have to do usability testing with the consumers. This is not what we're talking about, or not the final results, but it was important to get their input. And we had a team of social scientists and people from the EM community to structure these. And again, we were we were solving for the 16:9 television screen, not anything else. So this was a raw. This is not HTML5. This is basically PowerPoint, but these were our storyboards, and we asked each of the emergency managers to give us a use case. And New York City gave us a dirty bomb, a radiological device. And this is the content, or in the L bar, and at the top is their information. It's shelter-in-place instructions. This is the content from their web page. You can see it's pretty busy. I mean, just as an example of what we need to do for television is we need to simplify, and it should be understandable by people who don't speak English or the hearing impaired. We haven't talked about audio, but that's a big part of it. This is a wireframe. We use it in these discussions, and we actually published these findings for our members. It's the sort of a down payment on what we hope will be a style guide or a recommended practices for the industry in terms of the layout. And again, not how to do it technically, but what it should be in terms of the consumer experience. We had some macro findings that weren't about the UX specifically, but one is that even though the emergency alert system is rarely used, in fact, many of the EMs called it their least useful alerting tool, there are very, very deep relationships between emergency managers and TV news stations. It's emails, it's texts, it's phone calls, it's kitchen table conversations between spouses. One works at the station, one works for the fire department, that kind of thing. They believe that for the home television, not cell phones, but for that home unit, the fixed receiver, let's call it, this system should only be used for the most imminent threats. You would never use it for an Amber Alert. You would only use it if the fire is coming up the canyon, you've got to get out now, or some other threat to life that's imminent. Geo-targeting is essential. Station co-branding should be an option. And again, the need for common look and feel is very important for making sure that people know it's an alert. These are some other findings. I won't spend a lot of time on these, but the social science tells us that the source of the alerting authority should appear. And then giving people the ability to dismiss is very important. I have to give a shout out to Commissioner Carr, who was on this stage yesterday. He really nailed it in terms of saying the public must know what emergency alerts are, what they sound or look like, and what they signify. So this is the current state of our UX development. This is the new alert banner. This banner appears in the middle of the screen. It's pretty simple. If we can get it simpler, we will. But it appears in the middle of the screen for a couple of reasons. One is that you need to reserve the bottom third for breaking alert graphics from the station if they do news. And the top third is reserved for an EAS crawl. Not used very often, but we pledged to the commission that we would honor all existing public service obligations, including EAS, as we implemented 3.0. You'll see here that you've got these options at the bottom of the banner for more information or to dismiss, and dismiss is very important. People don't want the alert. We want them to dismiss it, but not try to opt out or not throw their TV set out the window. So again, here's the L bar. The source of the alert is very important. This came from Santa Barbara County OEM, and the information in the L bar is from the county, and then the TV station has the option to put in continued programming or news there. This is some of the best mapping we've seen. This map needs to be interactive, and our technologists tell us it can be with 3.0. This is designed to work whether the device is connected or not, but if it is connected, it gives you certain functionality. Very important to put "you are here" on the map. People have trouble reading maps, even if it's for a town they've lived in their whole lives. But we like the way they used orange, and there's no one of the things we've learned is there's no common symbology in the United States or anywhere in the world. The Weather Service, FEMA, local authorities, they all use different icons, different symbols, different colors. But we liked what they did. So they're familiar with a debris flow. Anybody from Santa Barbara County or California? They have this big problem after files. If we had a wider focus on that picture, there's a gray area at the top that was the burn scar of the Thomas fire, which was the largest in California history until last year. But it creates these debris flow situations where you've got nothing holding the soil, and they had a disaster in Montecito last year that killed, I think, 22 people. So information like this is important because another problem is that so many people in disaster call 911 looking for basic information that it ties up the lines, and it means that people who actually have emergencies can't get through. After the Hawaii false nuclear alert, 6,000 911 calls were stranded. So this is the new news beyond the UX for our show and the direction of the AWARN Alliance. Our board, we have a steering committee. We decided unanimously that we would expand the focus of AWARN, that we would go beyond official alerting, that we would use the pathways we create for a 24/7 news and information service for people. It could be initially post-disaster. You're no longer alerting people, but after the disaster, they may want to know where generators are, or shelters, or fresh water, hospital wait times, or in any time of the year. They may want to know about community happenings, road closures, weather, school closings. And so we have taken a shot at the UX. I'll tell you more about a conversation we hope to convene nationwide with news directors. We have begun fleshing out the UX for this information source. This is power outage information that comes from the utility that is pushed to the station. This content is not coming from the station unless the station decides that they want to use that picture-in-picture. We would hope that these would all be voluntary. They would have to be voluntary agreements between the stations and the emergency managers. We'd like to create a template for that relationship, and the station can use the picture-in-picture for their own branding and their own content. So in this case, you've got picture-in-picture of a newscaster who is introducing a live video conference from the OEM in Santa Barbara. So this is a schematic of our system. That in the middle there is a tool that Trevini is developing. It's an open source tool with support of NAB pilot, and it will allow the station to take content from different sources and push them through ATSC 3.0 to a whole range of devices and or broadband. So I did this today. I knew that I would have already done this, but I wanted you to know that we think that the connected car is a very powerful use case for not only ATSC 3.0, but also for advanced alerting. These vehicles are going to take tremendous amounts of data. It's really both ways, but especially the downlink side for navigation, for firmware updates, work zone information, incidents, traffic management incidents, and our panel was people from the public sector mostly, and they are going to be writing specs. These people are going to be writing the specs for what the communications arrays are, and not only cars or connected vehicles, but roadside infrastructure. And they are not thinking about ATSC right now, but to get that chipset integrated into that intelligent transportation system, we need to have a dialogue with the public sector players who are at least at the table making these decisions. So Our direction for 2019-20 is continue to focus on design and the UX. We will become more newsroom centric for integration of official alerting and ongoing news and information. We will convene discussions with TV news and other executives to develop a framework to do that, to integrate alerting and news and create a new news source. It might be a streaming service available through an icon on your set, but a framework for integrating news and information. And we believe that by expanding by broadening the focus of our mission, that we will actually expand our base of support. So I hope you'll come see our booth. We're right across the way in Futures Park, and we're there with our Japanese colleagues. I would like to end with thanking those organizations and companies that are members of the AWARN Alliance, and invite those of you who aren't to give us a look. We'd like you to join and support what we're doing. I personally believe that if we don't do advanced alerting with ATSC 3.0, someone's going to tell us to do it. And you know who that is. We might as well do it ourselves and do it the way that works for our industry. In other words, a voluntary solution, which we've asked the Commission for, needs volunteers. And that's how you can contact me. Thank you very much.